YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back with another episode of Terrible Take Tuesday. It's going to be the best episode yet. I'm already going to say it. We got 18 takes that I use sent in by you guys through our Twitter. If you want to participate next week, if you find a terrible take somewhere out there in the NFL world, you go ahead and send it my way to our Twitter at Goathouse NFL. There's a link down below. Also, you'll find a link for our second channel, the Goathouse Plus, and our podcast. Episodes every single week for that podcast as well, so you can check those out, follow, subscribe, do what you got to do. I'd really appreciate the support recently at 50K. Gonna keep on grinding. Let's get to 60K in no time here, maybe 100K a year from now. That would be fantastic. Trying to match the subscriber rate on both of our channels there, so need your help there. But the first terrible take, I actually found this one early last week, but Justin Miller there decided to nominate it himself, so I went ahead and gave him a shout out here. Everyone can kind of follow each other here. Kind of gonna get a follow train going, so that would be pretty cool if we got that going just based off this video. But top 10 running backs according to CBS. We got Christian McCaffrey, Zeke. I mean, you can see the rankings there, but they're pretty questionable. Pretty questionable leaving guys like Alvin Kamara off. That's the first one that pops in my head. I think everything else, there's a couple other guys we can talk about, but I think it's a little bold, but I think it's pretty terrible leaving Kamara off. Parts of this kind of make you think maybe it's based on last year because Kamara didn't have the best season. We saw Fournette kind of step up last season, but people will question having him 8. But then you see guys like Todd Gurley at 9. Saquon, we expect to be maybe the best back in football, but hasn't really been, number 3 yet. So it's kind of all over the place here. I know some people probably have a problem with Mixon or Chris Carson. I really don't. I think the talent is there. I think Chris Carson's pretty underrated. But I think having, maybe Zeke at 2 is a little high. Fournette and Gurley making the top 10, a little questionable, and not having Alvin Kamara in there. Pretty questionable stuff here. So one down. We got 17 more terrible takes to go, and trust me, it gets pretty terrible. Some of these Instagram accounts, they're out of control. Let me tell you. But here is a quarterback ranking list, and yeah, they're from Jacoby here, 1624. We see that Dak Prescott's at number 4, so I guess that's the kind of the questionable part. I'm a believer in Dak. I believe that he has a pretty high ceiling. Still somewhat of a younger quarterback with a good amount of experience, but having him at 4, pretty questionable. Ahead of Breeze, Watson, Rodgers, guys like that. Looking at the rest of the list. Some of this makes you think it could be fantasy, and that's why Dak's so high, but Kyler Murray down at 13 makes me think it's not fantasy. So there's a ranking list that's all over the place here. And, Jared Goff struggled last season. I definitely put Garoppolo and Cousins higher than that. I'd put Tannehill above Darnold for sure. Joe Burrow, I know he hasn't even played yet, but I'd probably put him higher. And Nick Foles getting a lot of, hate, I think. Not hate, but I hate when people use that, so I just said it. But, I think people are doubting him a little bit. I think it's only if he's injured that he's down there. I would disagree with that one. So kind of all over the place here. Another one from Jacoby here, and it's another quarterback. This one, a tier ranking, so elite options, solid starters, good QB2s, and bench options. So this tells me it's fantasy since they said good QB2s. Maybe, perspective of fantasy, it's not super terrible, but, I don't know. I'd probably put Watson ahead of some of those guys, ahead of them. I'd put, Matt Ryan seems to light it up in the fantasy department usually. And then you look at, I'm thinking Tom Brady's more than a good QB2 this year just because the weapons he has. And then, maybe Big Ben. I would say Big Ben better than that, but I think because he has the injury concern. So maybe that they're factoring that in for possibly QB2. And again, I know Burrow hasn't played a snap yet, but I'm going to put, I think he's going to rack up some points. I think I'd probably put Cousins, but for sure Rivers higher than just bench options. I think Rivers will air it out. The Colts, they do have a pretty good running game, pretty good group over there, but they made it clear they want to take some shots down the field. So I think there'll be more points through fantasy for Phillip Rivers because of that. Next, we got from Kyler Murray for MVP. John DeFilippo makes the list here. He is the quarterback coach of the Chicago Bears, and this one I'm actually going to say is not terrible. It's just very bold, or I don't know if it's really bold, but we'll read through it here. DeFilippo, the Bears quarterback coach, and who was the Jaguars offense coordinator last year, looking for juice for Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles. We walk around with a little bit of swagger to ourselves in terms of knowing we're the best QB room in the NFL. So I think majority of the people out there, the Twitter world, will say, yeah, he just said they're the best QB room in the NFL. That guy's out of his mind. That's really terrible. And I can understand why people say that. But, I mean, what else is this guy going to say? I think he's pretty confident in his group. So I think it's more just confidence and believing in his group. But it's pretty out there. So maybe not every take we put in here is 100% terrible in my opinion. But I think it will look like that to some people. It's pretty bold to say that. It's pretty out there to say that. But, can't really blame the guy for believing in his group. And it's interesting because DeFilippo was the quarterback coach for Nick Foles when the Eagles won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles. After that, I think, he was the Vikings offense coordinator, the Jaguars offense coordinator. Those things didn't work out too well. I don't think he's an offensive coordinator, obviously, but a pretty solid quarterback coach. So we'll see how it works out for him, Nick Foles, and Mitchell Trubisky on the Bears this year. Next, from Giraffe 36, we got some running back. I think a lot of people sent this to me. I just went with the first person that sent it to me. Gets kind of confusing. A lot of people sending me stuff. A lot of people sending me the same stuff. This is from an Instagram account. And we got running back tiers here. And, this definitely looks like fantasy. But, pretty questionable all the way around here. Starting at the top. Dalvin Cook is pretty darn good. But you worry about, he's holding out too, but you worry about the injury too. So I don't know if you would put him at the very top. You could argue it. So it's just a little bold. Kamara with the injury last year. It's a little bold, I suppose, a little bit. Mixon struggled fantasy-wise last year. I had him on one of my teams. It was mainly the offensive line's fault, but it's pretty bold putting him that high because you don't know what you're going to expect again. And Fournette, maybe a little bold putting him that high. But then we get to this next group of players here. Nick Chubb, even though he's going to have Kareem Hunt more this year, I'd still put him higher than running back 2. Just think about that. Your second starting running back on your fantasy team. I'd probably put him higher than that. Miles Sanders is weird because we talked about a little bit about fantasy in the last podcast, and I thought I was kind of predicting people were going to really value Miles Sanders very highly, and I was kind of afraid of that. And here we go, coincidence here that we were just talking about that. I would slow your roll on Miles Sanders being an elite RB2, so a top tier number 2 running back, which is a starter. Obviously, most people start, not most people, I say a good amount of people starting 3 running backs, some starting 2, and then a receiver, obviously in the flex spot. But Miles Sanders, I think, is a good back to split, almost 50-50 with somebody. So I won't be that high on Miles Sanders. And even though they don't have that guy he's splitting with, I just don't think his production and his play is going to shoot up tremendously. I just don't see it. He's a solid back, obviously, young back. Le'Veon Bell, I would not want as my second starting running back. I would not. Not quite as good as he once was, but mainly Gase does not like to run the ball. He doesn't like to run the ball, and they got a pretty big running back room all of a sudden too. Kenyon Drake, a little risky actually, but I would be willing to take that risk. Have him as running back too. Solid starters. Yeah, the Aaron Jones we talked about Aaron Jones in that latest podcast too, in fantasy wise. He was probably at the top of this list based off last year, but they draft A.J. Dillon high. They also have Jamal Williams. Drafting A.J. Dillon that high and believing in him tells me it's a little bit of a scheme difference, I guess, between Aaron Jones. And Aaron Jones about to be a free agent, so are they going to give a lot of that cut that is already split between Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams to A.J. Dillon? It's kind of a question, so it's a risky one. I actually agreeing kind of with this guy here, putting him down further down than people would expect. I wouldn't start Gordon. Too much splitting with Lindsey. I like Edwards-Helaire. I like Chris Carson. Flex options. This could be potential starting flex options. Some of these guys I'd be a little scared. Connor with the injury. Kareem Hunt being the second guy. David Johnson I would like very much. DeAndre Swift I would like too, probably. Montgomery, what's the situation with him and Cohen? I don't know. Montgomery's probably going to get a good amount of touchdowns, short yardage. I just don't think he's going to rack up a ton of yards. Then you have Singletary kind of versus Zach Moss in there. I think that's interesting that they have Jonathan Taylor a tier higher than Marlon Mack. I still think I wouldn't be too shocked if Taylor got more production at all. I wouldn't really be shocked at all. Mack gets more carries in my opinion. I think he will get more carries. I really do. So, and then Mark Ingram, that's the one that stands out. Mark Ingram is a bench player. I talked about that, and we talked about that in the podcast as well. The most recent one, does his value go down because they add J.K. Dobbins? Justice Hill was only a first-year guy last year. I had Mark Ingram in fantasy. Last year he was outstanding for me, very impressive, more than I expected. But you could argue that the production for fantasy goes down a little bit because they had a guy like J.K. Dobbins. But I would not drop him all the way down to bench player. I wouldn't go that far. So you have the question with the Bucs running backs, who's going to be the running back. So that's just interesting stuff there. So interesting list to say the least. Next sent to me by Josh DeVoe. NFL.com ranked divisions by QBs in first glance, and I think other people think this too. I thought not only were they ranking the divisions based on quarterbacks, but I thought they were actually ranking the quarterbacks in the divisions, but I think they're just randomly listed. It's kind of strange because they're not alphabetical. So we're going to give them a pass there with that, but they ranked what their purpose here. Their goal was to rank the divisions based on quarterback talent, and I think we're all in agreement. NFC South, yes, we're in agreement there. Number one, I looked at number 3, AFC West. It's pretty much Patrick Mahomes, and I'm a believer in Drew Lock. We still need to see more. Derek Carr, inconsistent, but we know he has the play in him. We don't know what's going on with the Chargers, either Taylor or Herbert, obviously. I think they overrated AFC West just because of Patrick Mahomes there. So they put them way too high. I'd put the AFC North ahead of them. And then I would put the NFC North as well. I think it's pretty complete. If I'm looking at it as Nick Foles, Matt Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, that's a pretty good group of quarterbacks, I think. Pretty much about health though. We've seen, and I'm not too worried about Aaron Rodgers, but we've seen that. But mainly Foles and Stafford. But yeah, that's a pretty good group there. If Trubisky's starting, I guess it weighs it down a little bit. AFC South, maybe Minshew weighs it down, but it's a pretty good group. To me, those 3 I just named could be ahead of that AFC West, and they're riding on Mahomes a little too much, for sure. But a big problem here is at the bottom. AFC East, I think, should be dead last. There's really no top-tier talent bringing that up. I'm a believer in Josh Allen. I like Tua for the future. I actually think Fitzpatrick's underrated, so either way. Stidham, I was probably higher on him in the draft than anybody a year ago, but still, not. You could get better, and you could prove some more, and Darnold needs to prove some more for sure. Needs to be more consistent. To me, the NFC East is no question better than the AFC East. I think they're letting Haskins and Daniel Jones weigh that down, but Daniel Jones was more impressive than we expected. Haskins, I think, needs to show us more, but I think he's got a bright future. And then having Prescott and Wentz, I don't think the NFC East should be last. So, interesting one for sure. From Stephen Paul, I think he has another one coming up too somewhere in this video. So he sent us 2 at SteelersPunk1. Tight end tiers. Oh boy, this is where we start to get all sorts of bad. It's an Instagram account here, and why I say that is mainly, there's things you can kind of debate, you can argue, but yeah, he kind of boxed some guys there in the bottom left. He boxed Ebron, which it's kind of bold to put him down here. I think a lot of people like ripping Ebron. I'd probably put him higher though. But Gronkowski, Gronkowski sat out for a little bit, so I guess that's what their take is. That's why they put him down here. But Gronkowski, complimentary? Are you kidding me? Gonna be much better than that. We already know he's gonna be better than some guys ahead of him on this list. Look at Mike Gesicki, Tyler Higbee. You got Gronk below him. Are you serious right now? Jonnu Smith's down there, the Titans. I think it's a pretty darn good tight end right there. I think he's better than a good chunk of tight ends that are ahead of him as well. And you notice that you put Gronk and O.J. Howard in the same group here, which is interesting. I think Jack Doyle's probably better than this. There's a lot of guys next to him that he's much better than. But a very funny one here. maybe another reason why it made the list here. You look at the bottom left, you see, you see Eifert down there with the Jags, but next to that, you see the Browns, and you see the Bills. We all know Dawson Knox is a tight end of the Bills, but this person decided to put Dawson Knox for the Browns and the Bills. Yeah, obviously a graphic mistake. Graphics get kind of confusing. I make them myself for these videos. But yeah, that's something I would double check there. Just Dawson Knox for the Browns and the Bills. So that was interesting. But yeah, definitely an interesting list here. Next, we got from Colby Jacob Chaston, we got best quarterbacks 5 years from now. So a very cool idea here of somebody to make this. Best quarterbacks in the league 5 years from now. Right on Carson Wentz a little bit. He's got a lot of potential. So I can see that. Obviously, Mahomes. Sam Darnold being up there. And I don't know if this is in order or anything, but that's pretty questionable. I know he has some potential, but there's nothing that tells me he should be grouped with these guys. Best quarterbacks 5 years from now. Gardner Minshew, I don't know about that one either. That's bold. That's really bold putting him up there. I don't think he'll be their starting quarterback 5 years from now. Pretty cool, like seeing a guy like Trevor Lawrence up here. I guess it's a little bold because he's not in the league yet, but definitely can see it. Russell Wilson, even at age 36, I'm on board. Josh Allen, actually, maybe a little bold, but I can be on board on. It's a high ceiling guy, a lot of potential there. Garoppolo, I'm gonna say Garoppolo's probably not on this list from 5 years from now. Maybe that's a little bold of me. Then Dak's only going to be 31. That's kind of quarterback prime 5 years from now, so that's a good look for Dak. Joe Burrow, I'm on board. Lamar Jackson, I'm on board. I think the main thing here, Minshew, but you look down to honorable mentions. You see Bridgewater, which I'm okay with. Got to stay healthy. Justin Fields, I'm okay with. Not in the league. Ryan Tannehill, okay, needs to stay healthy. Deshaun Watson, that's my problem. All these quarterbacks are in the best quarterbacks 5 years from now. Looking at Darnold, Minshew, Murray, two guys that haven't played yet, or one, and Trevor Lawrence, Josh Allen, Garoppolo. Joe Burrow hasn't played yet, I guess, so there was two. Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow. And Deshaun Watson, not in there. So, he's technically he's on here, but he's on the honorable mentions. So, very questionable there not having Deshaun Watson. Next week, this is a good one. This is all sorts of... It's all sorts of terrible. This is from Flight is Daddy. Thank you for pointing this in my direction, or pointing me in the direction of this graphic here. Because this is a good one. It's a terrible one, but that's a good one. Starting safety tiers, best of the best. I'm gonna throw Eddie Jackson, Derwin James, Jamal Adams up there. Maybe it's a little bold. You can argue some other guys that aren't up there. Derwin James we saw for 1 year, so it could be a prediction. Eddie Jackson had one really good year. He was solid last year. It could be a prediction. But then you look at elites. The elite's a big word. It means a lot here when we're talking football players. And they went ahead and threw a bunch of guys in there. Earl Thomas was elite. I don't consider him now, but maybe that's not too terrible enough. Landon Collins to me is just better in the box. He doesn't do it. He doesn't have a whole bunch of safety traits, but he's a solid football player. But he's definitely not elite. Budda Baker, tackling machine, not elite. Malcolm Jenkins. He was playing some good football about 3 years ago, and I wouldn't even consider him elite then. I would just consider him very good, but definitely not elite yet. Some of these other, the rest of them I can understand. And then we look, there's a big problem. There's a lot of big problems here. I don't see Jordan Poyer on this list at all. And this is definitely for this year too. This is not old or anything. You see Malcolm Jenkins listed with the Saints. And there's something else that we'll get to that'll prove that too. I don't see Jordan Poyer. I think Jordan Poyer is a really good safety. Anthony Harris had a career year last year. I don't see him on here. Pretty ridiculous. We go from best of the best, elite, above average, average, below average, unproven, and those guys aren't on the list. So those guys, and there's probably somebody else I can't even think of right now, a bunch of safeties. Those guys aren't good enough to be any of those tiers. So very interesting. Right there, then we look at, average, not too many problems. We look down to below average or unproven, and a big problem here, you see the Browns, and that is a picture of Christian Fulton, who was just drafted by the Tennessee Titans out of LSU, cornerback out of LSU, now in the Tennessee Titans. Safety tier list, I think they meant Grant Delpit, I think they might grant help it there. So, and that kind of tells me that it's for this year. So a very questionable list for sure. Kind of all over the place here. Wow. Next one. Keegan Jones sent this my way. Cornerback tiers. You see tier 1 at the top, then tier 2 at the bottom left. Then you go. So we're going from the left side, then we go to the right side in order there. Tier 1 I really don't have a problem with. What my problem is, they have elites. They're throwing that elite term back out, and that's for tier 2. So tier 1 is above elite. So in my opinion, I would only put 2 guys there, Gilmore and Ramsey. I'm sure Tre'Davious White's been playing lights out, probably borderline. But if we're talking above elite, I don't even know if I would put Ramsey there, because we know the talent, but we need to see more from him. We don't need to see more to know if he's very talented or even elite. But again, this is above elite. But I don't know. It's questionable. Then you look at elite, and we're throwing elite out for guys like Marshawn Lattimore, who I think's been extremely inconsistent. Joe Hayden, who I don't want to say is in decline, because he had a good year last year, but elite. And Steven Nelson. So it's 2 Steelers here. I'm just going to go ahead and say whoever made the Steelers fan is a Steelers fan. Steven Nelson, elite. Absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely mind-blowing stuff right there. Tier 3. I don't have a problem with guys like Jair Alexander and Kyle Fuller not being elite, because I wouldn't call them elite yet. But having them in tier 3 and having them below, Alexander and Fuller are better than most of those guys in the tier 2. Minus, maybe Richard Sherman. That's a maybe. Byron Jones, Marcus Peters, Darius Slay. They're better than those guys. The rest of them, Alexander and Fuller, to me, would be better than them. Having Bradley Roby in the same conversation as those guys, I don't know. It's all over. But look at tier 4. Casey Hayward, Patrick Peterson. 2 guys. Maybe they're not as good as they were a couple years ago. They're still very good. They are better than, I can't even count how many guys above them in this. Pretty ridiculous. Chris Harris Jr., same thing. So we got 2 Chargers. They're kind of, doubting the Chargers guys a little bit. Yeah, very much. It's a really all over the place. It really is. So the Chargers guys slept on a bit, to say the least, in this video. Patrick Peterson as well. It's crazy. It's crazy that people come up with this. Next, another one from Stephen Paul here. The Herd. Colin Cowherd. He seems to make it on our show. A few times already this year. And then you got Carson Wentz versus Deshaun Watson. Who you think's better, Carson Wentz? I'm going to disagree. A little bold. I like the idea of Carson Wentz. Still has some potential. Needs to stay healthy. Needs to stay more consistent. And then having him over Lamar Jackson, the MVP, just fresh off the MVP. I'm going to go ahead and disagree. And having him over Aaron Rodgers, maybe long term. But it's bold. It's pretty bold of Colin Cowherd here. There's a group of people that, last year people were like guaranteeing Carson Wentz would win MVP. Like, he was the front runner for that. And I'm like, I like Wentz. I think he's going to step up every year, but man, not right now. So there's people that are really kind of stuck on him. But I guess they should be, because he's going to be really good. But I need to see more consistency out of him. Next we got Xander Zupon. Predicting when rookie quarterbacks will start their first game. So this is CBS here. So Joe Burrow, week 1. Tua, week 13. It's a little bold. I can see. It really depends on the quarantine, if players are able to practice more and the season becomes a reality sometime soon. Then Tua can definitely start week 1. I don't think it'll take to week 13 for them to start him. But I guess I can see it. Then worried about the injury, perhaps. The Justin Herbert 2021 week 1. I guess they're going to refuse to start him this year. Which, this is more bold, I guess. I just don't. You don't draft the quarterback 6th overall and sit him, especially when you don't have like a lock-in starter. Tyrod Taylor's solid. He can get some wins with that team. Made it to the playoffs with the Bills a couple years ago. I just think Herbert starts at some point this season. So 2021. In 2022, you see Jordan Love. I can see it, actually. maybe another year after that. Jalen Hurts, though, so maybe this is Jason Lock kind of for. Maybe he's banking on Wentz. Oh, no, I can see actually on there it says on a different team. So Hurts starting week 1 on a different team. Actually, now that I see that, I can see that because I talked about that I think the Eagles kind of drafted him. They're going to kind of groom him to flip him for a first-round pick, which I think would be a mistake if a team did that, but I can see it happen. So I can't afford being a little bold here, but I can kind of get on board with that. So an interesting one for sure. It's a good one. This is a good one here. This is a terrible one, but a good one for this video. Cheesy Maniac, defensive tiers. So we're going from top to bottom here. So you see those teams at the top, and you can argue that. You can argue nothing terrible there. You can debate some things if they should be at the top. But then you get to the second tier, and I've been on the Buccaneers train. I've been telling people that the Buccaneers defense is better than you think, a lot better than you think. But I don't know if I would. Maybe you could put them at tier 2, but I don't know if I would Okay, this is where I'm getting. Well, the Patriots lost too many impact players, I think. Great defense, great defensive coaching, and really good secondary. There's not enough pass rush for them to be in tier 2. But the Bears and the Broncos, I just don't see how the Bears can't be in tier 1. They should be in tier 1, no doubt. Broncos are kind of borderline. Yeah, they probably should be in tier 1. Just having the Bears and the Broncos, who are on another level, in the same tier with the Jets, the Patriots, the Buccaneers, pretty bad. We go down to tier 3. You can't really compare. And the Chargers I would consider for tier 1. I would consider the Chargers for tier 1, if not tier 2, bottom line. They're in tier 3. Questionable. You kind of group the Chargers, the Titans, maybe the Packers together into one tier, I think. Not with the same teams on this list in this tier. You can't put them with the Eagles, the Saints maybe, the Seahawks. I would not put those together. The Chiefs, I think very underrated, very good. They're not on the same level as the Chargers, Titans, in my opinion. The Dolphins and the Browns, are you kidding me? So these teams, they can't be on the same tier. They're on the same tier, but they just can't be. They're nowhere near the same. Then you look further down here. There's probably, just to start it off, there's probably teams ahead of the Cowboys and maybe even the Cardinals could step up this year that those teams are better than the Cowboys. But the big problem here, this is the second to last tier. You see the Redskins and the Vikings here. Much better than a lot of teams ahead of them. The Redskins are going to have a ridiculous front seven, a ridiculous pass rush and run stopping team, and that's the key in today's NFL. I think it's always been. The Redskins, I'd make the case for that tier 2, and they're 2 tiers below that. The Vikings, they lost some defensive players. They did not lose any of their star defensive players, and they still have Mike Zimmer, who is known as probably a top 3 defensive mind in football. So I'd put them bottom line 1 tier ahead of where they are. So those are very questionable. Bottom tier, I don't know if the Lions will be that bad. I don't know if the Raiders might be better than that. So pretty questionable. This one, it's a cool graphic. I might add, it's a cool graphic that this person made, but it's pretty terrible. It's pretty terrible. Strictly 305 sent me this. Looks like, AFC. So the person that covers only AFC East, it looks like best. So ranking the cornerbacks, you're covering the AFC East on this Instagram account, and you're gonna make cornerback rankings. Within the AFC East here. Okay, you should know your stuff here. Gilmore, White. We're checking out. We're good. J.C. Jackson, I was a believer in him out of Maryland. I like him a lot. He's going to continue to improve. But having him ahead of Byron Jones, I'm just going to say no. I'm just going to flat out say no. And having him ahead of Xavier Howard, when this person put Xavier, maybe it's just a graphic mistake. A lot of typing here. But yeah, that looks pretty terrible. But having Jackson ahead of Jones and Howard, and then having Brian Poole and Jonathan Jones, 2 slot corners ahead of Howard. And I kind of backtracked there. Poole had a pretty good year as a slot corner, but I think Jonathan Jones is a better slot corner. Another one that's just all over the place. You think you kind of would get it down here, if you're covering the AFC East. But yeah, that's an interesting one. This one just made me crack up here. This is from Vic, and it's Instagram account describing teams in one word. The Vikings, mediocre. The Bears, bad. Just flat out bad. They're bad. Lions, sleeper. I think we consider the Lions a sleeper every year. I'm probably doing it this year, but I think everyone does it every year. Packers, dominant. So to me, I just think it's a Packers fan trolling that made this, and it's Um, I don't. Maybe you can't say it's completely terrible because you look at this season and if you're predicting, I just don't think anyway the Bears are bad. Maybe if Nick Foles goes down, there's some injuries like Hicks again. Maybe. The Vikings, they lost some guys. Maybe they're mediocre. The Lions could be a sleeper team, and the Packers could dominate the division again. It could happen. It definitely could happen. So this was more of a funny one, I thought. It's just you see a kind of mediocre bad and then dominant for the Packers. So pretty interesting stuff there. That one made me laugh a little bit, even though it could be accurate. It's just kind of an interesting one. Next, what the hell is this? I don't even know what this is. NFL redrafts, tight end rankings sent to me by Austin B. We got Travis Kelce, the number 7 tight end in football. I don't even know. I don't know what this is. I don't even know what it is. Are we ranking all the NFL tight ends? It's a redraft, but what kind of redraft? These guys weren't in the same draft. If we're just redrafting every NFL tight end, where the heck are the other ones? Not just more. There's a lot more that are way better in this 8. Not all of them, obviously. George Kittle, Travis Kelce, the best in football. Mike Gesicki, number 4 tight. I don't even know what this. I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't even know what I'm. Herndon, 8. I don't even know. Just Travis Kelce being 7 and mainly not knowing what the heck this is. We're moving on. Blockbuster trades. This person would like to see sent to me by Eli Wall. Right off the bat. Dak Prescott for Josh Allen. So, okay, they're going to swap Prescott for Allen. It would never happen, but they didn't say it's going to happen, so it's okay. But, they're coming up with good trades that make sense. Dak Prescott for Josh Allen and a first-round pick. I just don't know. No, I do know. Neither team would do this. I don't know. I guess everybody can say they would like to see it. So maybe it's not terrible. You just would like to see it. It's just not a trade that either team would do, in my opinion. Leonard Fournette for okay. The rest of these are okay. No, not the another Cowboys one. Michael Gallup and a second-round pick for Jamal Adams wouldn't happen. It would take more. Even though Michael Gallup's pretty solid, it would take more than that for the Jets to let go of Jamal Adams. It would be Michael Gallup and a first-round pick at least. I see a Josh Rosen trade. Yeah, some of these aren't bad. I think the Jags want more from Ngakoue, but if he's going to hold out, he's going to hold out. The Vikings would trade for another cornerback. They got a million cornerbacks once again, so I don't know if they would. You can't put it past them. They love their cornerbacks. So perhaps there. Definitely could happen. But, that first one was a little crazy. And then we got one more on the day, a big episode here. Christopher Ferreira sent me this. Safety tiers. And we seem to the same account give us the corner tiers, and they were pretty bad. I think the Steelers fans probably not going to like me on this one. There's a group of people that are probably Steelers fans that are just all over the Minkah Fitzpatrick hype after last year. And very good season, very good player, still a kind of a prospect, a lot of upside. I am not, and remember, Tier 2 is elite, so Tier 1 is better than elite. Better. I'm not putting Minkah Fitzpatrick in that, And if we're going to base it off of 1 year, not even a full year, if we're going to base it off that, Derwin James had an elite season. Justin Simmons just played an elite season. Anthony Harris just had himself the top-tier season as well. Those 3 guys showed us one. They showed us good years before that, most of those guys, but they showed us one season. I thought, those seasons were better than Minkah Fitzpatrick seasons last year, so we're kind of going off one season at the top, and then we're kind of not at the bottom, and a guy like Anthony Harris isn't even in the elite tier, which I'm not saying he needs to be, but I think the list is kind of contradicting itself, is my point. Guys that are guaranteed better than, I would almost say 2 guys in that Tier 1 list. Kevin Byard, Harrison Smith, Tyrann Mathieu, I'm predicting Derwin James to be. So it's just kind of all over the place. I think if you're going to put Minkah Fitzpatrick and Eddie Jackson in Tier 1, I think Harrison Smith and Kevin Byard just, 100% need to be in there with them because they're better than them. A lot of potential there from those guys, and they're very good, don't get me wrong. It's interesting. I guess I don't really agree with the list that do elite is not the top tier because Hawks Is Hawks better than elite? Yeah, I guess that's opinion based, but I don't know. A lot of good takes. No, a lot of terrible takes that were good for Terrible Take Tuesday, I guess today. So appreciate you guys for sending these my way. 18 of them we went through. So really enjoy making that. Hope you guys enjoyed. Smash that like button if you did. You can follow us on Twitter, and that's where we can talk terrible takes, where you can send terrible takes. Link down below for that Twitter and anything else that you may need. That's going to do it. Don't forget to subscribe, turn notifications on. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.